So I want to talk to John in
Hey, John.
Oregon.
How you doing?
You're live with Eric and Jamie.
Hello. How are you guys?
The lights are on. We're super
Marvelous.
excited.
Ain't no Jesus
Little
here.
heat.
What I'm wondering is if we can get the thing behind
The green
us.
screen?
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know.
So what did you want to talk about today?
Yeah. I was going
I
to say
wanted
you're
to talk
cracking
about
the whip
the
on Mark
nature-
there.
Hmm?
Sorry.
I wanted to talk about the nature of the genetic code. A while back, so I teach genetics and evolution. I work with universities to make teaching materials for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I got a YouTube channel where I display these as well as them going to schools, stated clearly.
So John, why do you hate God? Sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
I have
was
my
raised
God's not
Mormon.
dead moment. Why do you hate God?
Is your mom a monkey? Is your grandma a monkey? How far back before your family is monkeys? Boom. That's actually, I didn't make that up. That's, to be clear, not a straw man. Never mind.
Just let it go. Let it go, Jamie. Go ahead, John.
I hear all these arguments. I get all these arguments on YouTube all the time. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Teaching things in an actual classroom versus teaching online, it's really interesting what kinds of things come out when people are behind a username. But a while back, you guys had a caller who made a statement that I've seen a million times as well. He was arguing for the existence of God because of the genetic code. It was kind of like a two-part argument. So the first part is the genetic code is a real coding language. That's his first statement.
False.
Only intelligent minds can invent coding languages. And then he concludes that that's evidence of an intelligent designer.
John, can you please smash that to pieces for us?
Well, yeah.
Oh, and also
so
that intelligent designer's Jesus. The unstated.
You guys attacked him on the first.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You guys had attacked him on the first statement that the genetic code is a real code. He's actually right on that. According to information theory, according to there was this paper back in the 40s, like 1940, by Claude Shannon, about what communication is. It was the mathematical model of communication, and he outlines what a communication system is. And, however many years later that we actually cracked the genetic code, it was an absolute perfect match to that. And that paper allowed us to really understand what communication is, what coding languages are, and that allowed the digital revolution to take hold. And the genetic code really is a coding language in that same sense. So his first statement was actually true. It's his second statement that only an intelligent designer can invent codes. That is false. And the study of how communication systems evolve is in the subfield of evolutionary biology called signaling theory.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, when you have, I could kind of go anywhere with this, but do you feel like you need any more information on why the genetic code is a legitimate code?
No, I think
I have a question, because you're saying it matches the definition of code in signaling theory as far as communication. Can you elaborate on that? Because as far as I'm aware, DNA doesn't take an intelligence to generate in the same way that a pattern on the side of a mountain that a stream runs down doesn't take an intelligence to communicate. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on specifically what you mean by that, or rather specifically how that fits into information theory.
Okay, so you've got, let's just talk about what information is. So if a physicist is talking about information, they're talking about physical information. So the mass of an object, its speed, and physical entities can communicate with each other. If I get hit by a bus, the hardness of the bus, the speed of it is communicated into my skull. That's
Okay.
how communication. That's just normal physical communication. And that's physical information. There's information in every photon and every atom about its mass and direction, and all sorts of things like that.
So the way you're describing information, at least physical information, almost just sounds like facts about reality that can be understood.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's different than coded information. Coded information is very specific. So if, how do I describe this? I usually use visual aids with this, but for when you have coded information,
AIDS
you
as
have an
RNA.
encoder
So.
and a decoder, and then you have a message.
Mhm.
So if I'm saying a word, like if I'm hungry and I want to go to lunch, I'm going to take that idea and decode that into vibrations of my voice box, and that's going to be transmitted through the air. The purpose of a code is to create a message that can be transmitted. You know, you've got this idea in your head, and you want to get that into someone else's head, so you have to decode it into something that's transmissible.
Mhm.
It can't just beam thoughts directly. And then the receiver has to understand that code in advance and know how to decode it so that they get that message inside their head that you've delivered. And one of the really interesting things about this is that the entire process is physical. You are physically making vibrations with your mouth when you speak, when you use a word. And that's physically interacting with the ear, and the ear is physically interacting with the brain, and the brain's processing that and decoding that. The entire thing is physical. Same with your computer. You hit a button on the keyboard.
Same as your mind.
It's an electric pulse, right?
I mean, I'm sort of, well, okay, I'll stop myself from asking what process isn't physical, but to clarify, is DNA communicating information, or sorry, encoded information under that definition?
So a gene in the genome, it creates a messenger RNA. The messenger RNA is transmitted from the nucleus of the cell out to the cytoplasm, and it's received by a ribosome, which then reads it to create a protein. And if you change,
so
you change the code, you change the protein.
See, I think that what
is that
gets me is
it fall into the same category as when I'm communicating with you in encoded language, or with encoded information?
I mean,
sorry, say that again.
Would that fall under the same categorization in information theory as when I'm communicating this question to you right now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
what are the limits on what defines for example, you use the word reading, right? So is a mountain reading the raindrops dropped by a cloud when they're dropped?
Yeah, I mean, really, it feels like there's a agency that's being put on these things, the coding and the reading of that thing, right?
Yeah,
so the messenger RNA, while it may have a code, it is not bringing it to a thinking agent that is decoding it and reading it. You know, and so I think that's where the disconnect is for a lot of people, is we're using language that is usually steeped in thinking minds. And so if I were to pull out, you know, and have a ribosome under a microscope, it's not going to be like, what's up, you know, and tell me about its day. And so in that way, that's the distinction that we're trying to make here. Isn't the read write part of it? It's the agency behind it that people ascribe to it. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the point that I'm trying to get to, because
Well, so you don't have. What we have is we have a set of symbols, which are codons. A codon is 3 nucleotides. And the ribosome is set up in advance to
we have a set of
automatically
chemicals.
read those codons in a specific way. And you actually there are some organisms that use a slightly different genetic code. So there's actually different languages that can be spoken. If you take one of your genes.
That one I have to jump on as well, because in information theory, I'm sorry, there's a difference between the language English and the language, in quotes, if it is properly called that, of a type of DNA. I don't know whether information theory accounts for that, but there's very clearly a distinction there.
Now, in linguistics, there's a distinction. In information theory, there's not. In linguistics, a language is something that humans use to communicate to each other. They have the human aspect inserted in there. In computer programming, we don't. We don't care if it's a server talking to a.
To be clear, you've jumped from biology to computer science.
I think the catch again is on the.
Yeah, is that there's an agency. What we would define as an agency. If you want to get into philosophical statements about a deterministic universe and how, on a larger scale, a human is a series of biological systems, and on a smaller scale, things that read and copy DNA are biological systems, and so it's a level of complexity. If you want to just talk about, I don't know, it's the same thing but scaled up, we can have that conversation, but generally when people are talking about communication, they mean what people think of or define as a thinking agent communicating to at least one other thinking agent, or recording verbal information in that way. Right. So, for example, when you when you said we have a series of 3 letters, I mean, I don't mean to jump in there, but no, you have a series of 3 chemicals. When you have A, B, and C written on a page, they're made with the same ink.
This is outside of my pay scale.
These are
weirdest way to ask for a raise. Yeah.
So you're getting held up on the fact that we represent them with letters.
Well, no. I'm just saying when you say they're 3 letters, I'm just clarifying that language as well.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between.
And we're getting hung up on it.
Well, I mean, we represent all of those with letters.
Well, and we're getting hung up on it because there are people who call into us and say, no, these are real thinking things, and it is a real language, and that language was written by a god. Mm-hmm. And so we need to, what we're doing is, because you know what you're talking about, we're trying to pick those things apart so that we can better understand it to make better arguments in the future.
I'm not trying to argue that, oh no, your understanding of DNA encoding is flawed because you have actually a working knowledge of it as opposed to a cursory knowledge. I have sufficient knowledge to interview you about it is basically the limit of mine, whereas you have sufficient knowledge to teach it and prepare teaching materials and have a YouTube channel devoted to it. Which are 3 things that I cannot do. But I'm trying to clarify, because you've presumably heard the argument like, oh, okay, well, if there's letters, then it's a language, and if it's a language, therefore Jesus is talking.
Well, I mean, it really should be, it really is a coding language. I mean, a linguist wouldn't want to call it a language because they specifically use that for people talking to other people.
Well, because it's different.
But if you talk to a biologist who studies the language of animals, as animals are communicating to each other, a flower communicates to a bee. One of the problems with this is that you've got different fields that are using the same word in different ways.
Well, okay, yeah. That happens in
political
science.
I think that's what we were trying to drill down to.
Yeah, it's just that. Yeah. To be clear, do things that read and write and encode and communicate DNA, are they thinking agents, and does that require a mind?
No, there's certainly no mind inside of. I mean, a mind is.
But how can you know that if you don't have Jesus? No. Okay, sorry.
Jamie's being.
I'm being a little bit
snark. That's okay.
I'm being a little snark.
That's all right.
The Smurfs would be a much better show if it was called
John,
the Snarks.
Thank you for calling. This has actually been really enlightening.
Yeah, I don't want to cut him off yet, because if the entirety of his call was me like trying to get to the point where I was trying to figure out whether he was saying that DNA had an agency and trying to draw the distinctions, then it's going to be.
Yeah.
Thank you for being an excellent caller, and I want to let you get back to what you were saying, I guess.
Okay. We don't have, something doesn't have to be an intelligence like a human in order to communicate. Your computer can communicate. A flower communicates to a bee. These things happen naturally. And the study of how these language systems evolve is called signaling theory. And how signaling theory works is you have two evolving entities. And one of them picks up on a cue that another one is sending off. So one of the really kind of famous examples is that you've got these gazelles that are being chased by predators. And when a gazelle is in a herd, it can't run as fast as it would on its own because it's tripping over its neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So the predator can easily catch up to the herd. And then the predator is trying to select the weakest animal to chase down because it doesn't want to screw this up. And so it's looking for signs of which ones are weak. And it just so happens that gazelles start to freak out and jump vertically when they can't run forward because there's slow animals in front of them. And so when they jump really high, the predator knows that one is really strong. I shouldn't try my chances with that one. This one is not jumping very high. I'm going to go after that one. So this is just a cue. The animals are not, when this first starts to evolve, the animals are not doing this on purpose. They don't know how to communicate to the predator. But if this happens long enough, they will evolve to jump high, and actually there's going to be selection pressure for them to jump abnormally high. And we see this with a lot of species that are hunted by cheetahs. They jump abnormally high, and they actually lose the ability to run fast because evolution's tweaked their bodies to jump vertically and to send this signal.
Yeah.
And when
drafting a basketball team, gazelles. Sorry.
Exactly.
And
signaling theory.
It's called
signaling theory. Something. Yes.
I read it in the comments. I don't know.
I was about to say, have
no.
you just been sitting over there waiting for your moment? Actually,
Nope. There's someone in the YouTube live chat who knows about this stuff and knows what you're talking about, and this is just so outside of, at least for me, I know this is outside of my range of knowledge that I feel like this is a class which I would take. I don't feel like I could communicate this well. Have you thought about communicating this?
For example, on a YouTube channel, or maybe you could do it
professionally
and prepare educational materials.
Yeah, so I've got a long form one that I did just interviewing an engineer about what genetic information is.
Why don't you plug it? What's your show?
Which is
I'm gonna watch it.
Stated Casually is that one, and I think the title of that video is "What is Genetic Information?"
Rock on, man.
And we go over that, and draw stuff out and stuff. But I would like to do an actual animation on it eventually because this is a thing that comes up from creationists all the time, and they almost have a good argument.
Almost.
but not quite.
Yeah.
It's better than some of the other ones.
Most people respond in the wrong way. They attack the code when they should be attacking the idea that genetic information has to be, or that
information has to be mined.
Systems can only be created, right? That's the false part. Communication systems can evolve. We know how they evolve.
That's really cool. I'm stoked. I'm going to check out your channel. Thank you for calling in. Really fun.
Keep in touch. Actually, send an email, and/or Facebook, and/or tweet.
Yeah.
Or Instagram. Add me on Snap.
Cool. All right. Thanks for having me.
Take care, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Send hate mail to. Did you see that?
Huh. Where was it?
The lower third said, send hate mail to, and then it had the